So, hello everyone. Hope you're doing well and welcome to this live stream at Monday here, Monday 7:30 p.m. Brussels time. I should say here at the Frenzel Piano, as we do every Monday, live or in a practicing session. Also Thursday 7:30 p.m. at the clavichord. So all now in the framework of the Beethoven project. So indeed, as Jonathan was writing in the chat before the live stream started. That's the project in which I'm going to record all solo works by Beethoven on 22 CDs, actually 60 works, and that project starts the end of this year. So in these practicing sessions, I am sharing with you my way to that project that will take at least at the minimum 3 years. So sharing with you my thoughts, my doubts, my just opening my kitchen, so to say. So if you want to attend those practicing sessions live, also hanging out in the chat with the awesome community of Authentic Sound, which is really cool. No better way than to subscribe to the channel. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Also hit that bell icon because otherwise YouTube will not send you the notifications, not only not for the videos that I make, but also not for the live streams or the practicing sessions at the clavichord that normally goes as a premiere on live on YouTube, the YouTube platform. So subscribing and hitting the bell icon, that's and setting your notifications, that's something I will and I have to say every live stream because I receive messages from you that you haven't been notified for the live streams lately, and YouTube has changed that apparently. So today we're going to look again at the last movement of the Opus 2 number 3. That's the third Pianosonata by Beethoven in C major. We actually could spend the rest of the practicing sessions this year to that magnificent piece of music because there is so much to be discovered, so much to talk about, and also for me, so much to practice. It's not an easy piece to play and has nothing to do with what I'm saying now regarding tempo. It's just difficult to hit all the characters and all the things that are in the music hidden, not hidden actually, but they're there to bring them to the surface as a player. So, but I think this will be the last session on that particular movement. I don't know. We will see how we proceed in the next practicing sessions. Anyway, that's what we're going to do. So normally these sessions will take about 30 to 40 minutes music, and then I'm diving in to the chat a little bit to hang out with you as I'm saying hello now to Jonathan already here before the live stream talking with Amy, theoretically musical. See Stefan here and Athanasios also from Greece. So if you type in the continent or the country you're from, we can see how many countries or continents we reach. Sometimes, actually, pretty often, we reach the 5 continents globally. So uniting this world by social media, that's a cool thing that music can do and should be doing. So unifying people. Anya is in the chat. Anya scouted, and that's my wife. She has this little symbol of the moderator. If John Citron joins us, he is a moderator for Authentic Sound as well, and actually he will become also the moderator for the chat. We're going to talk about that in other videos. I think it's necessary to step up a little bit and have some community guidelines. So I see also Rasislav here, and there is a name. Do you have echo? That shouldn't be the case. So if you just give me some feedback on the echo thing. So there's John. I was running behind with my chat already. If you have an echo, I wouldn't know for sure what to do. It might be the differences between this microphone, which is for my voice, and the two main microphones, which are hanging above the piano. Anyway, if it still continues, let me know, or Anya will notify me. But I wouldn't know what to do with that because there is no headphone connected. Yeah, there's a headphone connected to my laptop, but that shouldn't make a difference. Anyway, just saying hello to you in the chat. There is a name I cannot read. Miva? Hope pronounce your name correct with the 3 smileys. Basileos, great to have you back here. It was a few weeks since you were here, I think, in the live stream. Joseph Davidson, great to have Adam is here. It's always great to see your names popping up in the chat. There's John Citron, also moderating for authentic sound here, and but you all will know him. He's an active participant as always. John knows a lot of period instruments and the things we're talking about as well. So, okay, Rastislav, he was listening 2 times. Well, 1 time I would say that's enough. Okay, great. William Walker is here. Okay, he was playing the 9th Symphony. That's an honor that you interrupted that to listen to this live stream, actually. And yeah, theoretically musical. So let's see how many countries we have. That would be great. And Anya will count, or you're counting them. That's always great to see. Just scrolling to the chat now. Okay. Great. Hope you have a nice time in the chat. It's always nice also to see that you are talking to each other about things that actually sometimes are very far remote from what I'm doing here, but that's completely fine because the chat is really the place to hang out. And that's one of the big bonuses for these live streams and these practicing sessions, that there is a platform for you also to connect well while I'm really working really hard. So that's all fine. So today, again, the C major Sonata. I will be recording after this live session the last 2 movements of the F minor Sonata. That's the first one, because I was actually didn't think about it, but I didn't have the recording anymore for tomorrow, so that will be solved hopefully tonight. And then we're moving onwards with the recording of these Opus 2 sonatas, which are great. And then we move on, I think, from next week with the Opus 7. On perhaps another variation, but the variations, the early ones, I want to play them at the clavichord because they sound so well there, and that's a great way, I think, to implement also the clavichord into this recording session, because the clavichord really deserves a place. But not going too much in detail here. And I will make that video on the Beethoven project, so sharing with you which pieces I'm going to record on which CDs and so on, and then will come the website. We have actually registered a new name for a website, the beethovenproject.eu, I think. Should check it, but the website is of course not finished. It's not started yet. But there will come all the information of the project when time allows. I think it's a matter of prioritizing, perhaps. But anyway, so there we go. And if you're new here to these practicing sessions, it's good to say this up front. These are not finished recordings, so I'm really practicing. So for these pieces, I have more or less technically practiced them, but still I'm not playing a concert here. I'm just practicing really, and things can go wrong, but that's fine. I hope it's fine with you as well. So there we go. I'm going to play the whole movement now, not like last sessions. Then we broke up in after a few pages and then started to talk about some things. I will try to reach the end of this piece and also implement the things that we discussed the last session. Also, you remember these octaves, trying to play them without pedal and without finger substitutions. I don't know if it works. To be honest with you, I haven't been practicing this piece a lot this week. I had 3 meetings last week, so 3 days that I was really not at home. It's breaking my schedule here. Sometimes it happens that I need to be in a certain place to talk with people face to face, and that has an impact, of course, on my practicing scheme. But the more interesting to see how the music developed, because I'm convinced that once you practice a piece really focused and concentrated, if you're concentrated during practicing, that the music is developing, but also that your technique is developing. Of course, not when you don't play it for 25 years, but just for a few days, and just continue to play other music or to think about it. I think that somewhere here music is getting better and it's being developed. We'll see. And there we go, 116. So people sometimes ask, why are you not using your beautiful metronome more than your digital app? That's a good question. Because of laziness, perhaps. So tactus inequalis, chang, chak, chang, dum, pum, 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 pum. Okido. There's a lot that we have to do on this piece. Let me just drink me first. Drink me first. Let me drink first. Because I'm thirsty tonight. Let me just check if you're not too much shocked in the chat here. Okay. Yeah. Joseph says Beethoven's work is pretty etudish. Yes, etudish, isn't it? Yeah, well, it's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea. It shouldn't sound like that, but of course he's making use of all kinds of etude-like figures here, like apparently octaves and six. I think we have to work on bringing out every detail here. I mean, that every figure, every motive gets its own character with more accentuation, with more timing is of the essence in this piece with all these rests. So if you have passages like the release of that note really dictates the length of the rest. So it's an important how long. And you only know when you release the note if you have done it well, because then the silence actually shows the recipe of your decision of the release of the key. And those things need to be really, really, really worked on. Then, of course, it's still difficult. It's so hard to, with no finger substitutions. Again, we talked about that last time. Just by the release of the key and the way you relax to the next note. If I just have in the fifth finger here and fifth and fourth finger, so these changes, substitutions, then it sounds completely different and different. Imagine what would happen if I add a pedal. So those are really tough decisions. This is, of course, that's the easier part, the part with the left hand. That's okay now. I'm really, really looking forward to share this piece also on the Fritz, because the action there is still much different than on the Frenzel. It's it's a little bit lighter. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can share about that, because there are a lot of thoughts also in the finishing now of the piano. Well, I'm looking at it now. Apparently, of course, you can't see it, but I'm looking at the Fritz right now. So the finishing of that piano, it's actually kind of finished. Well, the pedals need to be settled. So the left pedal, so the due corda and the una corda needs to be just attached and regulated. But we are now experimenting with a damping system, which is, well, decision has to be made how much the piano should really mute the tone after releasing the key. And that's something that's apparently not being described in that time. Compared to organ history, building of organ building, so to say, we have important French sources, Dombido. In the Netherlands, you have Van Heuren. You have other historical publications on organ building, which make very clear how people actually in detail built organs in the 17th, 18th century. But apparently for piano building, there's much less published in the 19th century, which is actually surprising for me. So all these details need to be thought about, and we're taking our time, Joris, for finishing his piano, and I don't mind, because the piano as it sounds right now is not muting the tone as the Frenzel does. So if I play a chord, it's away. And these Viennese pianos, they had a kind of name as to be quote-unquote dry compared to the French ones. So this Fritz is more, It's 1816, but the concept, the type of instrument actually goes back to the very beginning of the 19th century. It's interesting as an addition for this instrument. So if you talk about use of the pedal, then the damping system in this regard is really important, because on the piano that mutes the sound as dramatically good as this Frenzel does, you have absolutely no help whatsoever from the piano in lengthening the notes, and just touching the pedal gives a totally different world. So if touching the pedal is not necessary by the fact that the piano is not damping as good as this Frenzel, then you have a completely different process of decision making concerning the pedal, use of the pedal. So that's an important decision, because as right now, we are in the midst of deciding whether we're going to have the damping system be more, I don't know in English, so be more effective on muting the sound or not. I think we're going to decide that, because also releasing the tone, when the tone is not muted really direct, it has an effect on the sound quality as well. So it's a really complicated process. And of course, finding solutions also in building pianos, and we are actually off track here from our Beethoven piece, but I think it's an important thing to share with you, because it's on my path also for recording these pieces. Can you imagine how big of a decision just this simple damping system is? Just replacing the dampers with a more absorbing material, and we have more or less the effect of on the Frenzel. Never the same, because the dampers on the Frenzel are a little bit more heavy. It's 4 gram. We measured that against 2 gram on the Fritz, so that's really different. So they fall on the string, and so of course, how heavier they are, the more effective the muting is. But those are really important decisions, and they affect also what we were talking about here. So sharing this piece again on the Fritz will be really interesting, I think, to compare. Okay, so let's try to make a little bit more music out of this piece. So what I typically tend to do now is find a certain balance until the piece works. There were bits and pieces that were okay, and I think overall every part was more or less okay, but it's just upgrading those 2-3% also to a level where they connect to each other, that makes this piece feel like a unity first, and after I play the last note, make the piece feel to you that it took a long time to play this piece. Now it's 8 minutes or something like that. To me, this feels rather long, and if I am a little bit bored, probably you are as a listener as well. And the differences between just, you have this horizontal line where you're aiming for, and somewhere in your head there is an abstract feeling, that's the direction I need to, it's to come as close to this line. But if you just pass by that line by a few centimeters, so to say, just so not hitting it, but also not missing it by a lot, that's worse than completely missing it. And that's the level, I think, where we are. I need to bring everything in balance, and let's see how we can do that. Certainly not by talking about it. Okay, what are we going to do? Where I'm going to start? Let me just imagine you were not here, and just practice as I would practice normally. Which part shall I start then? Because there are always passages in the piece, places that kind of dictate the whole movement. And here it's for me not clear now. You have, of course, a strong beginning. That needs to be fine because it's returning a lot. This motive, this theme will adapt anyway because our fast notes, and playing fast is always, it's easier than just making the balance of the 8th notes right. Then you have these long runs. That's also a different motive. Then you have this left hand. Kind of tempo indicator as well. Then of course you have this difficult passage here with dramatic. More or less resembles the beginning and the rhythm, but then you have this beautiful melody. All these different parts need to fit and to be brought in balance with each other. That's absolutely required, because otherwise this piece falls apart. Also when you play it faster, it doesn't matter actually. Okay, let's start here. So you have a little bit of the articulation in charging, pom pom, pom pom. It's too much. It's difficult because you have on the right hand the same thing. Better. That doesn't sound right, because you need to this articulation. Beethoven indicates that with a little bout. That's actually harder than it seems to be. Okay, so here we have this rhythmical. They build, of course, a tension of the rhythmical tension, while this melody is very, I wouldn't say static, but it's just, it starts, of course, without this rhythm, and you keep the feeling. You have to, as a listener, I think, still the feeling it's above this rhythm, but it's still there, the rhythm. So the rhythm is pushing actually for the climax to come. So the release, ta-dum, pa-dum, ta-dum. That is not okay, that's not okay. So what I'm looking for is to have this melody just go and come back, and at the same time this in German they would say Unruhe, this unease of this rhythm pushing a little bit against that melody, but that melody is so strong, and in the way it goes, that it's difficult for that rhythm to push. But still you have, by pushing a little bit, you have this feeling that it comes together and it goes up again. And then of course you have this minor switch, which is of course, yeah, unexpected. There also the left hand takes over the melody, so that you build up the tension, of course, to end finally. There again starts it, so to have this as a one bow of tension without actually changing the tempo too much. Sometimes I play this and this is from the first moment correct. And it's hard to say where it's 0.5 percentage difference between really great and kind of okay. There's not so much difference, and so that's the more difficult to find. And this piece is living by that. If you're really aiming in that sweet spot, then this is magnificent. It's a little better. It's not. We're not there yet. Let me just check the tempo. Why am I checking the tempo now? Because if I feel sometimes a little bit uneasy with the way this music is developing, sometimes I'm just off tempo. A little bit too slow, a little bit too fast. I think tempo is right. So the energy comes here from these syncopations. Tom, 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 This was much better. Still thirsty. Because now this low G is giving the energy to really play the whole line that's coming. I think Anya had too much pepper in the meal tonight. I'm really thirsty. So we came here now. This G should give the energy for the whole line. Surprising also for me in this piece is to learn that there is so much piano and pianissimo here. So what I typically tend to do here is playing a lot of crescendo actually, because that helps build this what we're talking about. So from, and if you then of course add a little bit pedal and crescendo, crescendo. And again more. So this helps to build the character of the piece, which apparently I think that's in there, this drama, but it's not indicated. This crescendo. I'm not saying that you cannot do anything in terms of dynamics, but it's not indicated. So I don't think that Beethoven meant to have a crescendo. He could have written it if he would have wanted. So he didn't. And so, yeah, there is a lot of, here's fortissimo in this passage, which obviously, then it's forte, but he's returning very soon to pianissimo, even dolce. I was using pedal here, I think it's a nice effect. And for the rest, it starts piano. It sometimes is good to just check, because without knowing of if you play the piece a lot, you are adding dynamics, and well, that's a choice. There is no better, it's no more fun than to play Haydn sonatas where there is no dynamic indication, because then you can play according to what you feel is necessary. But here, of course, Beethoven was very specific, and dynamics tell a little bit about, if not much, about the character of the piece as well. So, oh, it's already 8:15. Amazing how fast time goes when you just dive into a piece like this. So forte here, then it remains forte here, piano, sforzando, but not change of overall dynamics. Fortissimo, again, bringing it back to piano. Forte piano, pianissimo, then again one time forte with the octaves, fortissimo, forte. If you play it like that, it's C major, D major. It's actually unbelievable. It's the first time I see this. Scales or octaves in octave scales in C major, D major, E minor, and then he goes fortissimo, and then again pianissimo. So a lot of piano, pianissimo, which also tells something about the nature of this piece. It's joyful at the beginning, it's dramatic here in the middle section, but still very intimate. He's waiting for something to come. Here it is. Do you hear that? That's so much different than what we did before. And still there is not so much difference in what we did now. It's just falling in its place more than it was before, and it's not much, it's just fitting tightly right. We're not there yet. I have to make decisions on the legato thing of the melody. What am I going to do? I think when you break the melody, when you break the cantabile line with an unwanted articulation, then you're done. You cannot rescue that passage anymore, because it falls apart then. And of course the pedal would help, but you know, we've been disciplined, we are trying to not to do that. Not saying that eventually at the end I wouldn't use the pedal, just to help me a little bit, because on the recording, you know, you have to, or a performance or a concert, you have to make decisions. but we're pushing us a little bit as far as we can, right? So that's difficult, but I think it's possible. Also the intervals, if you see that, I'm just thinking out loud now. I haven't seen that. Cha-cham, ti-dam, ti-dam, ta-ram, ta-ram, ti-dam, pa-ram. So these are very stressed or intervals that actually tell a sad story. Diminished 7. Diminished 7. So the left hand or the rhythmical pulse builds, of course, this rhythmical, unease, feeling of unease, but also has a clear rhetorical meaning. In the Baroque, this is tam, exclamatio, ti-dam. Bach, ti-dam, ti-da-da-dam, tam, ta-dam. So harmonically this works, this is very, very strong. So this needs to settle. I'm not done with this. And the art, of course, and practicing is to come to a moment where you know from yourself that anytime, if I would have to play this tomorrow in a concert, I would find a solution that it sounds well. What I'm doing now is putting in front of me every bits and pieces of the piece that I have to work on, and that I can look at in great from very close, so in detail, which makes it difficult to play because while playing you are bringing together everything that you just have ripped apart. But of course, if you have to make a decision right now, I would play that, and I think nobody would notice that I'm still developing my ideas on this. But that's the interesting part. And the interesting part is in this, that if you can give it a little bit of time to develop and look at this from a very close distance, then it may develop in a way that it surpasses what you would have done just by giving it a solution. So I'm a little bit yeah, would I say a freak here in just sharing perhaps with you all these details. But I hope that's interesting for you to see. Yeah, I'm practicing like this. And if it's not for a practicing session, if I would practice just on my own, then after 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I would just walk in the garden or do something else and then come back 30 minutes later and then try it again. That works sometimes. Sometimes it's good to have 1 hour of just thinking on the piece. Let me just finish. We will come back on this piece. It's not finished yet. It's one of the more difficult Beethoven movements. It's way more difficult than the variations that I've done on the clavichord. It's also this movement especially is more difficult than the first three together because of the differences in story that's going on. It's not only in motives, it's in rhythm, it's in characters, major, minor. All these differences are here and has to be combined into one piece, one united piece. At the end, you have this long trill, and I have had some questions how I'm playing that. So you have several options here, and the one that I actually executed now is a trick that I learned from Jacques van Ootmesse. I'm happy to share it with you. So double trills are always difficult, and Czerny indicates here you go from, actually, 3-1, he says, 3-1. So this is a really difficult passage. So if you're not familiar with the last with this movement, so he starts Beethoven with this long trill, and then you have the right hand, the left hand. The left hand joins the right hand in the trill, and then the right hand gets a double trill, and then it goes further in just a single note, going to the D sharp, then to this. Actually, the D sharp leads you to this unexpected modulation, which is actually not a modulation, it's just a shift in key to A major. So you have several options to play this double trill. First, to play it as a double trill, and then it's an interesting thing to reflect upon. We have mentioned that before, and some people actually in the comment boxes on YouTube mentioned that also. If tempi were slower, then perhaps trills were slower as well. We discussed that before. I'm not the specialist in this, but what I see if trills are written out like Bülow does, or even in piano schools like Hummel and others, they're written out most of the time not too fast. So I think that's true for these long trills, that you had a very steady but kind of slow. But still then it's difficult. And you can tell here on this Viennese piano, the frets will be regulated in a way too perfect way. It makes my life a little bit easier, but still, what's difficult, what's interesting there, I share you that. So the key depth, so that's actually how far you can depress a note. So it's here. I don't know how many. I think if I remember, this is, but it's from memory now. It's about 7 millimeters. So it's way less than the Steinway, obviously. Way less. The Steinway, I don't know for sure how many millimeters it is, but it's less, even less than my Irar. But anyway, so you have to compromise in sound versus repetition speed. And the Fritz was originally regulated at 6 millimeter, I think, which makes the, you know, if the I will make a video on the action of the Fritz certainly, but this is a little bit difficult to take out. It's a little bit dangerous to break hammers. But anyway, so you have this hammer goes up and then it falls back actually, and before it really falls back, you don't have the option anymore to play a new note. So the less key depth you have, the faster the repetition is, because this, the smaller is the distance that the hammer or the shaft actually needs to travel back, and it falls back only by its weight, which is ridiculously low. So this falling back of the hammer and the shaft is actually what makes these actions a little bit slowish. They are extremely fast in producing sound. You just hit the key and you have immediately sound, and also changing the color of the sound is typically for these Viennese pianos. You hit the key harder, and it gets a little bit of this wooden sound because you're hitting the hammer head a little bit through the leather coverage which the hammer heads have, but that's a little bit technical. So, but we actually gave the frets a little bit more breath in its sound. We needed to do that in the bass, and so it became also a little bit slower. And for playing trills, that's tricky. So there comes a moment where you're going to miss some notes. But again, just not to go too technical here, because I'm actually going way too technical in what I wasn't planning to do that. But what's a good option, that's a trick of Jacques van Nootmessen. You can play a double trill by just hitting in the first finger here, hitting one note every two notes. So if you have D, E, and now I'm hitting only the B together with the D, and I'm not hitting the C. So I actually don't hear that. Certainly with the other note. or without. It's more fluent, it's more easy, and certainly on a piano like this. So I'm using that trick here. Don't tell anyone. Otherwise, I would use 4-2 and 5-1 actually. But then it's difficult to proceed to the D sharp, because you want to make that transition as fluent as possible. Again, we're coming back on that drill. Also for me, I need to practice it in a way that I can repeat that every time without actually missing it once, because yeah, we live in the time of the CD performance. Okay, so I didn't think that we went almost 1 hour now on this piece again. So I'm sorry to stand still so long with one page. I hope you don't mind. So let me just replace my microphone here. Sorry for the noise, because otherwise you won't hear me, I think. And go into the chat here with you a few more minutes. Because you know I have to work tonight, I have to record. I'm privileged to record the F minor sonata, last two movements. And I have a surprise for you, hopefully ready. That's the Erlkönig of Schubert. I don't know if I can record it tonight, but I'll do my best for the coming weeks. Would sound always also great on this Fritz piano. Here's my water. Okay. Erlkönig, but then in the Schubert tempo. I made a recording on my clavichord years ago. It was way before I actually participated with Lorenz in this tempo research, and I think that's simply too fast. It's not really fast, but it's too fast. And in that Schubert tempo, 152 for the quarter note, whole beat, that's giving you really this horse-like movement. It's great. Sounds great on the Frenzel as well. Okay. Let's see what my chat is doing. Weird things as always. Yeah. John answered the question. I'm actually playing indeed from the Simrock edition here. And I cannot repeat it enough. It's so difficult to find, but it's the edition, I think, to play Beethoven from. It's this one. Hope you can see that. So that's the Édition Revue Corrigée Métronomisée et Doigtée by Charles Czerny. And you will see, if I have Louis van Beethoven in the title, you see why. See, Louis van Beethoven. So apparently, I didn't know, Joris Potvliegen told me that Ludwig van Beethoven, sometimes even like to call himself more rather Louis, and certainly van, because his grandfather was born in Mechelen. It's not far from where I live. So he's a kind of Belgian composer as well, you could say. So Louis van Beethoven. And probably Czerny would know. It's just a little detail, and I'm happy that people see that, actually. Jonathan, I will make fingers from God Save the King variations. They're, strangely enough, not in the Czerny Pianoforte School. They're mentioned, but not in the category of the great works. And actually, I based my 60 works on that list of Czerny, but I included those two. Beethoven made 2 variation sets on English themes, which are actually great. So I will do that. Martin, a double trill in the early 1790s must be very rare. Do you anyone else know of earlier examples? That's a really good question, actually. If there would be one composer, that would be Clementi. But even in his Gradus ad Parnassum, and that's a little later. It's over here. Because I'm playing a Latte Gradus ad Parnassum, which is a wonderful work if you want to play daily exercises, but not like in a Czerny way. These will come after the Czerny etudes, by the way. But I don't remember actually double trills here. And perhaps Czerny has made a school of ornamentation. John probably will know. But that's a great question. If that's a great question to actually um, take a look at some works of that time and see if double trills were already written. Would be great to know. Yeah, John writes, except for Beethoven and Clementi at the time, I can't find of many. But you would be surprised sometimes the level of or of technique that some other pianists had, like Steibelt. He was very known at the time. It's also very interesting to make a comparison with Steibelt one day, because Beethoven was compared with Steibelt at a certain moment very early on in his career, and his touch was heavier. Steibelt had a more, and this is what Schindler describes in his biography, but it sounds so true actually, because it's so you can simply imagine that that Steibel's touch was lighter, more piano-like than Beethoven's. He was more heavy, and Beethoven actually said that's because I played too much the organ in my youth, and that's I read that, and it's such an incredible comment, because I experienced the same thing. Even the other week when Joris was here, I was playing on the Fritz, and he said, well, maybe try it with a lighter touch, which is not so hard if you play the clavichord. You can simply reduce the weight and increase the finger speed to have the piano still at the same dynamic level, so to say. And indeed, the piano gets a more lively sound. It sounds, I think, also louder, and I think that's the difference that they were talking about in that little quote about the comparison between Steibelt and Beethoven. So how cool is that? I think that those little things that really make I enjoy those so much, because suddenly you see those people more with a three-dimensional perspective than just putting them all together in one box, because of course that wasn't the case. Yeah, Miriam, he sometimes uses the first name Louis, yeah. But to what extent, I wouldn't know. But Louis van Beethoven, you are in this time of nation building. You see that also, you see that certainly in Schindler's biography, but certainly also in Forkel's biography of Bach. So he lifts the status of Bach to Germany, so to say. And so they were using these figures also to kind of, and I think in every country they did that, so to bring the nation together around very known persons and what they produced. So Louis van Beethoven became Ludwig von Beethoven. So John writes, Steibel preferred English and French pianists. Okay, that's interesting. And Jonathan asks if I'm interested in how you're going to separate the third and fourth movements of the Fifth Symphony. I have no idea. In the whole beat impressions, I have to think about a way to do that and find some time, probably. Or if it's not, yeah, we can have both parts together. That's actually a cool series, and it's just so pity that the sound quality of those symphonies is, yeah, that's not so nice. But I think it's a cool way to give you an impression, hence the title Whole Beat Impressions, of what such a symphony could sound like. And I had some wonderful collaborations. Someone reached out to me, having actually typeset whole the Eroica Symphony, first movement in Sibelius, which is a program that is also enabling you, of giving you the possibilities to actually produce or let the music sound with all the instruments given. And it's amazing how a computer program these days actually can give no accents and in fact sound a little musical. And what's great about these computer programs, they add nothing but a few accents and some dynamics. And that's great in a way, because you get a picture of how the music in abstracto, I would say, sounds. Of course, if you give this as a kind of impression of how a symphony in whole beat sounds, then it's not always too convincing, because it sounds a little dry. And the amazing thing, and it's not an idea by me, it's one of the patrons, Jason, who came up with this, that he actually sent me a recording of a Beethoven symphony. I said, "How have you done this?" And I think it was really, really well done. So somehow, even played faster, slowing down, you get a little bit more of this coherent picture than a computer would be able to do. But yeah, we see how this develops. Yes, in one video, I think, Jonathan. Okay, guys, I hope you had a nice time just scrolling through the chat here. Tom was here as well. Classic Top William. That's a new name. Welcome here for the live streams. Again, Nicole, I see a lot of people. It's great, great to see you back here during the live stream. So, hope you liked this session. Again, I was talking about these details that keep coming up in this movement, and we need to nail it down. Really, this movement needs to be on its best before we move on. So perhaps next week again, and I'll try to practice then a little bit up front, because that will develop the piece as well. Certainly for these details that we spoke about. So guys, I thank you for watching. Also thank you to my patrons. As always, there are a lot of them in the chat, which is really nice. And they are, as I say often, the backbone of what I'm doing. They push me beyond those walls that sometimes are just in front of me. So if you would like to support a little bit the things we're doing, that would be great. I would be thankful also if you would take 1 minute of your time and have a look on our Patreon page. We just had our monthly hangout with awesome people. That's a community that comes together there, and also give feedback to me a lot, which is also on that field amazing. So, and I will be updating our Patreon page because it's, I think, static for more than 2 years, and we're doing some different things than 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Not different in nature of the instrument choice, because the clavichord will be always in the center of what I'm doing. Now even surrounded by 2 great pianofortes, the clavichord is so close to my heart. But at the time, it was more or less a clavichord channel that I had, playing music from Bach to Beethoven. I still play music from Bach to Beethoven, but we have 2 other instruments. And of course, the tempo research has been added to the package. It was already there behind the scenes, so to say, but I didn't spoke about it. So that's all changed, and I will upgrade that Patreon page. But if you have just 1 minute of time to look at it, that would be awesome. Okay, and now I'm going to prepare for recording, and if things go well, even a recording for tomorrow. That will be the minuet of the F minor sonata. Okay, see you soon again. Bye.